And now, Move the Sticks with Daniel Jeremiah.
What's up, everybody? DJ Bucky back. This is episode 2 of Move the Sticks this week. Little two-a-days.
I know, two a day. 2 a days. 2 a days.
2 a week. 2 weeks.
Twice a week.
Yeah. It's I wasn't gonna do the double up. Mix a lot, but it basically is what it is. We got 2 episodes this week. Earlier this week, we were talking running backs. Today, we're going to spend some time. TD will tell you what position we're going to jump into in just a minute. But first off, YouTube. YouTube views have been great. We're doing this on video now. Thank you guys for checking that out. You can subscribe to it, to the show on YouTube. Catch us on iTunes. Catch us on NFL.com, and soon to be on NFL Now. Those are all the different areas you can see it here. And then for those that are just checking us out for the first time, 2 former scouts, and we're looking at the NFL through scouts' eyes, and we'll take a look at positions and games as they come during the regular season, and we'll touch on some guys for the future in the draft as well. But TD, you're behind the glass, and you're the all-knowing one of what we're doing today. Why don't you fill everybody in?
All right, up on today's show, we have our defensive back previews, cornerbacks and safeties. We've done it for wide receivers, quarterbacks, and running backs as well. Go back and listen and watch those shows. But today's show, we'll do defensive backs, and then we'll also do a who would you rather have, cornerback versus cornerback type stuff. It'll be a fun show. But first off, man, guys, Tom Brady, got off. Suspension lifted. Let's jump on that first.
Yeah, first of all, Bucky, I mean, the NFL, I was driving in today, and I was excited to listen to Sports Talk Radio because I wanted to hear some previews of the games coming up, Thursday night football, college season kicking off, big Saturday slate of games. And then the Tom Brady thing drops. That just dominated the headlines. NFL takes center stage once again. What was your reaction?
My reaction, I was a little surprised. I mean, I thought maybe we reduced maybe to 2 games, but for it to be completely overturned, it's a huge surprise. I think all the Patriot fans who have actually blown me up because I put an asterisk by Tom Brady in one of my rankings because I didn't know. I was unsure about whether he deserved to be ranked in the top 5 based on if he was going to be available or not. They can quit hitting me up now because I will make the changes in place. But I think for the Patriots, you have to be excited because then you get your guy back. You get to play the offensive style that you want to play with the veteran orchestrating the deal. I think they have an opportunity to go back and be a very, very productive offense. Patriot
fans won't agree with me on this take, but I'm almost disappointed. And not because I'm on some high horse about what Tom Brady did or didn't do. I wanted to see Jimmy Garoppolo play in some regular season and some meaningful snaps to see what you got. Now, everybody knows that the Patriots already are going to surrender their first-round pick next year, and as I understand it, that's not going to change with this ruling. So they have no first-round pick. Jimmy Garoppolo plays well for 3 or 4 games, and you're confident Tom Brady has another 5 or 6 years. He seems like he wants to play for a long time. Maybe you could have recouped that first-round pick with Jimmy Garoppolo. Now, look, we're not going to get to see him play, and nobody's making any kind of a big move for Garoppolo just off some preseason games.
Yeah, but I did want to see how Jimmy Garoppolo was going to play at the start of the season. I also want to see how that coaching staff was going to change and tweak their scheme to allow him to have success. He's been outstanding during the preseason. I want to see how much of his game would change once we started seeing the real bullets fly when the regular season started.
One player for this Patriots offense, now with Tom Brady in the mix, who scored a touchdown against the Panthers the other day. I believe it was the Panthers they played, right?
Yeah.
Scott Chandler, the tight end. I think when you look at what Rob Gronkowski can do, and now you have another big athletic tight end who not many people, maybe the fans aren't familiar with him. He's very athletic. I think this offense, Tom Brady gets it clicking. I think you see this 2 tight end set, they're going to roll with it.
Yeah, I think you will see a lot of 12 personnel, 1 back, 2 tight ends, 2 wide receivers, because I think that's their best personnel package. When you look at their wide receivers, Julian Edelman is a nice player. Brandon LaFell has been a nice number 2 receiver for them. But make no mistake, the best players, their best playmakers are at that tight end core. And so with Rob Gronkowski and Scott Chandler being able to control the middle, and both big targets for Tom Brady, who's a very accurate thrower to target, I like what they can do. And I think Scott Chandler will be a household name by the end of the season this year.
All right, well, that's enough on the Patriots. They're getting enough press. If you want more Patriots coverage, I'm sure you tune in to NFL Network, and we'll have you covered with wall-to-wall coverage there. But as we get into this corner and safety discussion, I want to kick it off with an Ask 5.
Okay, let's talk about it.
Uh-oh, wait for it. Oh, there it is. I didn't hear anything, TD.
You didn't hear it?
No, there was no audio.
No,
we're working on things. Still training camp.
No, there was supposed to be a real fancy Ask 5.
I mean, watch it.
What?
You know what? I'm gonna give you what you want. Okay.
Thank you.
You want to see it up again?
Yeah.
All right. Hey, Bucky. Before we get into safeties and corners, let's start off with an Ask 5.
Oh, I like that.
Ask Ask 5.
Thank you. Yeah, that's what I was looking for. And for those who don't know, Ask 5 is where I just reach out to 5 personnel executives. So it could be a pro director, college director, general manager, and I'll pitch a question to them on text, and they get back to me and give me a response. So with our discussion in the secondary, I've posed this in the past, and I'll get your thoughts on it here in just a second. But more valuable in today's NFL, a dominant corner or a dominant safety? And so these are the 5 responses I got back. First response said you take a corner. He said, I think the trendy pick is safety, but I still like a shutdown corner. You can take one man out of the game or take out half the field. The second one also said corner. Gives you a lot of flexibility within your defense. You can do a lot of exotic things when you can take away the number 1 wideout. Then I had one that said safety. Depends on the defense you run. For us, safety is a more valuable spot. And then 2 more here. When you go through all the top teams, it tells you a corner, having the big-time corner leads to success. And finally, kind of a mixture of what we've heard. Depends on the scheme. If you're a heavy blitz team with Rex Ryan or Dom Capers, I would say corner. But for our scheme, safety is the key. So 3 corner votes, 2 safeties, but really scheme kind of depends a lot of what you're looking for there.
One of the big things that you learn in scouting is understanding the importance of fit within your scheme. How does a guy fit your scheme? What scheme do you have? Because it changes the way that you view and rate players. And so when I look at the secondary, I still have a tendency to rate corners higher than safeties just because the ability to have a guy that can play man-to-man coverage, a guy that has a versatile skill set, meaning he can press, he can bail, he can play off, he has the ability to control that side. It allows you to do a lot of creative things, not only in terms of defending the pass, but it allows you to add another defender to the run game to stop the run. So I would go for the corner, but I do believe safeties are very valuable, increasingly valuable. When I was in Seattle, there was a guy, Dick Roach, who was a secondary coach, and he said that the league is evolving to where you would play with 4 guys, 3 corners, and a true center field safety. That's how you have to play it because the tight ends are so good, so athletic, that you no longer can play with the box safeties. He said it about a decade ago. I think it's shifting because now you need that box guy like a Cam Chancellor to come down and make plays.
Now it's kind of funny because the versatility, I think, whether you're talking about corner or safety, you want corners that can be able to cover outside. They could also cover inside. Then you want a safety. It has to be 1 or 2 guys. He has to be athletic enough to be able to drop down and play and cover man-to-man, or he has to be big and physical enough to basically function as a linebacker in your nickel defense. So now you're just finding guys that have to be able to do more than one thing, not just having those 2 high safeties and playing ball.
The game has also changed. You look at Arizona, the way they use Deion Buchanan.
He's a linebacker, basically.
He's a linebacker, and more teams are going to these big safety defenses where they call big nickel. So big nickel would be you have 3 safeties on the field and 2 corners as opposed to having a nickel guy. But that safety acts as a linebacker, gives you athleticism to cover the tight end, but he's still a thumper. It has changed. It's hard to find safeties. I know on the road when you go and you have to evaluate safeties, it's one of the hardest positions to evaluate because you never really get a chance to see them in coverage. You wonder if they're tough enough to bang. You don't know about their communication skills. It's just a position that is very, very valuable. I still go for corners, but safeties are one of those things you have to have.
I think this is a much broader discussion. I'll try and keep it brief here. But the challenge for me in the scouting in the fall, I think safeties and corners are both hard to find in the college game right now because if you're a college coach, you recruit a great athlete. Yeah. If he's going to help you win games, you're better off putting him in on offense in these shootout style of brand of football that we're playing, and you can get some points at him. Because if you have a great corner, the hash marks are different in college. So you're going to have a short side of the field and that wide side of the field. So all they're going to do is you're going to say, okay, we put your corner, you're going to put that receiver over to the boundary. Now you've got to defend the whole rest of the field, and they're going to be able to find holes. And then in safety, if bubble screen right, bubble screen left, you have a great safety. It's hard to have an impact on the game.
It's funny, and because of that, we wonder about why we can't find these premier corners in the National Football League. Well, you pointed it out. All of the top elite high school guys are going to play wide receiver because they're fascinated with playing with the ball. But I think part of the trend that we're seeing with these teams that are taking wide receivers and making them cornerbacks is because you understand and appreciate the athleticism that some of these guys have that maybe are washed out at wide receiver, but if you can get them to turn around, maybe playing press coverage, they can have success, much like Richard Sherman did and some of the other guys that have been conversions.
All right, we're going to jump in here and go through 4 corners. There's not in any order, but 4 of the premier corners in the National Football League. We're going to use our 3 terms to describe them. We're not repeating words here, so we try and make it a little bit harder on ourselves. And then we'll go to 3 elite safeties, and we'll do the same thing there. And I'm glad that I have you with me, Buck, because You played both positions in the National Football League. So you want somebody that's qualified to talk on secondary
hard
play.
position to evaluate.
You played on the offensive side of the ball as a wide receiver as well. So I think you have a keen understanding of this, and I want you to start us off here with Darrelle Revis and how you describe him.
Love Darrelle Revis. I think Darrelle Revis is really a coach's dream when it comes to playing the position. The three aspects, the three traits that I would describe: technician, competitive, and cerebral. Technician in terms of a guy that can really employ a bunch of different techniques at the line of scrimmage. He can press, he can bail, he can play off, he can use a catch technique down near the goal line. He has everything in the toolbox that allows him to be successful. He can play in the nickel on the outside. He's complete. Competitive. When you watch Darrelle Revis play, he challenges guys at the line of scrimmage. He doesn't concede easy completions. And having known coaches that have coached him, they talk about his preparation and how he competes with the scout team guys. That's the kind of player that I want on my team. And lastly, cerebral. Smart player, understands how to read the alignments of the wide receivers, understands formation tendencies and the way that people want to attack him. Because he has all of those traits, he, to me, is the best cornerback in the game.
That's strong. That's strong. Just take him as the top guy. To me, I'm saying the same thing you did. I'm just using different words. We haven't looked at each other's answers here, but I got the 3 Ps. I've got patient, I've got polished, and I have positioning. And let me explain those real quick. Patience, to me, a corner gets in trouble. As you know, you're at the line of scrimmage, you're in press. You widen your feet, you lunge, you lose. You have to be patient to be able to catch and be able to move with a wide receiver. He's very, very patient. I say polished because he doesn't take the cheese. If he's playing an off coverage, he has a way to see through the wide receiver to the quarterback, to be able to read the depth of a quarterback, what kind of routes they're throwing. He's so polished and so smart. Intelligence is the word there as well. And then positioning down the field. We saw that catch 1,000,000 times from Odell Beckham in that preseason game, which didn't count because Revis had rode him right out of bounds, and it was in perfect position. Go up and make a special one-handed catch, but you have no real estate to land. I just think his positioning down the field at the moment of truth, which is a scouting term we use when the ball's up in the air, you hear 50-50 balls. Another term is it's the moment of truth. And Darrelle Revis is as good as anybody.
You know, all those traits that we both talked about allows him to have a lot of success, even though I don't think we would say that he's the best athlete on the field. I think his ability to understand how people are trying to attack and what wide receivers are trying to do with their stems and alignments allows him to play a little quicker than maybe he would test. But this is an outstanding player, a guy that I think you certainly can put out there and have him lock up the field. The next guy that we're going to talk about, speaking of locking up the field, what we got?
DJ mentioned routes routes against Darrelle Revis. Are there any routes that you don't want to throw against a guy like Darrelle Revis?
You know, in talking to Darrelle told me like really early in his career, after his second season, we were at an event together, and I asked him about playing the position. He talked about he always has a tendency to line up inside the wide receiver. He says, look, most of the throws are going to be inside. It's only a couple things you can do that break out. Come back and out. He said the majority of the time, most people want to work inside. So he prefers to sit on those in-breaking routes so he can jump them and make plays on it. And I think if you look at his history, he makes a lot of plays from off and press because the positioning that you talk about. He understands how to maintain his level.
And I think people think of, you talk about lining up inside. I'm not just talking about in press. You're in off coverage, but you're shading the receiver to his inside shoulder in there. So on any of those in-breaking routes,
he's already a step
slants, digs, skinny posts, all that stuff, he's already in good position to be able to cut off and make plays.
Yeah, he understands how to do that. His ability to understand hash split alignment, meaning where the player lines up based on where the ball is near the hash, gives him an advantage. Yeah, the next player that I want to talk about, we talk about being able to lock up a half of the field. There's been some controversy because he doesn't travel. He only stays stationed on the left side of the field. Richard Sherman, what are the things that you see when you watch him?
Well, Richard Sherman, I mean, look, the things that make him special, the three traits I have, I'll start with long. I mean, that's the first thing you notice when you scout him at Stanford. You just see him. He's a former wide receiver. He has that linear, long build that you look for in a corner. The ball skills, that former experience as a wide receiver, being able to locate the ball, make plays, and really in some clutch moments when you look at his career early on. He's got phenomenal ball awareness and ball skills. And finally, intelligence. Obviously, he went to Stanford, so you know he's smart. But not just book smart. He is very, very football smart. He knows what people are trying to do to him. He's very keenly aware of down and distance. And that, to me, sounds simple, but Buck, you watch so many of these guys. It's 3rd and 7. And they don't have an understanding of what kind of routes, what you're going to see. He will jump the crap out of some routes because he knows where the sticks are and knows how to play them.
You know, it's funny because a lot of people ding him for playing in that system and they don't move him around. But I actually think what you do when you move a guy around, you actually weaken the defense because you require 10 other guys to adjust to one guy moving around, and it's harder for everyone to be on the same page. By positioning Richard Sherman at left corner, everyone knows what they're going to do on a down-by-down basis. And look, if the offense wants to attack him, they know exactly where he's going to be. I give him a lot of credit for being as successful as he is playing that side because he's on the strong side of a right-handed quarterback. He's going to get all the stuff that is tough. The traits that I described, Long, you alluded to it. Look, you don't find guys that are that tall, that can move around, that can put their hands on people at the line of scrimmage, reroute them, make it very, very difficult for them to adjust and get into their routes. Richard Sherman does that because of his length, size-wise, arm strength. Instinctive. You talk about his ability to jump routes. His instincts, his innate ability to make plays on the ball stems from his understanding of concepts, understanding of situation and circumstance, and because he played wide receiver, he really can put the pieces of the puzzle together. I think that is one of the reasons why he's had a lot of interceptions throughout his career. And then being a ball hawk. We've seen cornerbacks that are in perfect position time after time, but they can't make the play. He is a ball hawk. When the ball comes in his area and if it's errant, he makes the play. I want guys who can register turnovers because it's the biggest deciding factor in games. Richard Sherman is an outstanding playmaker on the ball.
Before TD jumps in here again, I think I've used this phrase before. Rex always said when I was in Baltimore that the biggest momentum swings for a defense, so in a positive sense, were a big hit. It wasn't a turnover. It wasn't a sack. It wasn't a fumble. It was just a big hit that was kind of an energizer to the defense. But he said the most, and I'll use a word that's very familiar to NFL fans, the most deflating thing that can happen to a defense is a dropped interception.
Yeah.
I mean, this is you have an opportunity to get the football back to your offense. Dropped interceptions are crucial. You don't see Richard Sherman put the ball on the ground. He gets a chance to get it, he goes and gets it.
You know, you kind of like the Barry Bonds of it all. Like, you only get a handful of pitches thrown in your direction, so you really have to take advantage of him. He does that because not many balls hit in his direction, but when they do, when they have an errant toss, he picks it off. I think he continues to be one of the guys that we will talk about being a dominant player for a long time at that position.
All right, TD, what do you got?
All right, guys, as listeners and watchers know, you can send in your questions. I always have a lot of questions. This is a scout school for me. So questions and YouTube comments and tweets and whatnot. And we have a question here from Hand Egg Report who asks, what does a long-rangey CB like Richard Sherman have to do to guard a shorter, quicker wide receiver like Antonio Brown?
What do you think, Buck?
You know, it's tough because shorter guys have a tendency to give Richard Sherman problems. When you go back and look at the tape the last couple of years, T.Y. Hilton kind of gave him some issues.
Did Eddie Royal give him some? Somebody got him in San Diego.
Oh, a little bit. Eddie Royal ran a couple in and out routes. They were underneath him, and he had some success. Jarius Wright was able to get him on a double move. Smaller guys for big, long-range defenders, the in-and-out quickness, the stop-start quickness, the suddenness. Sometimes when you're a long-range guy, it's hard for you to drop your hips and kind of regenerate that energy once you stop. I think for Sherman, when he plays against those guys, it's important for him to put his hands on them early so he can control them and reroute them because he doesn't want to get in a foot race. And when you talk to him, he talks about like sometimes being vulnerable or susceptible to guys running those in-breaking routes and being able to put his foot in the ground. But it's something that he's very conscious of and something that he diligently works at in practice.
And another thing that's going to help you, and this is obvious, is if you get a heavy pass rush when you're in that situation, because
or if you got one of those monsters sitting in the middle of the hash.
Oh yeah, take everything. Well, you can funnel. Yeah, that's the other thing. You can just play outside, funnel them into your safety. But the other thing is, look, you talked about stopping and starting. That's going to be the big challenge in a matchup like that. A lot of those routes take a long time to develop. So if you can get a pass rush going and eliminate some of that worry that you have as a long, big physical corner against one of these guys.
Yeah, because, the funny thing is he bails and he presses, and his ability to kind of play in that side windy shuffle technique, his ability to get his head back around allows him to make a lot of plays on the ball. You have to be able to attack that technique, but he understands how you're attacking him, so he's always ready and one step ahead of the curve.
All right, this is one of the more difficult evaluations, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people out there that wonder why we even have him in this discussion as one of the top four guys, because last year he did not play like one of the top four guys. But ability-wise, talent-wise, and at his best, he's as good as anybody, and that's Patrick Peterson.
Yeah, Patrick Peterson, he is definitely a hard evaluation because when you look at him on surface, he's everything that you look for. And part of the traits that I will talk about define it. Athletic, versatile, and a playmaker. He was the same way at LSU. Super athletic, a guy that can run around, can make plays, was an outstanding punt returner in college, showed it early on in his career as a pro. He can make a lot of things happen. He can move around. He's a guy that, quote-unquote, travels, meaning that he goes to either side of the field matching the number one receiver of the other guy. So it takes a level of athleticism to be able to play on both sides of the field and in the nickel because your footwork changes every time you move locations. He has that. Playmaker. He is a guy that has the ability to make plays on the ball. When the ball is tipped, when the ball is thrown in his area, he has the ability to get his hands on it. And when he gets his hands on it, he can take it the distance. So as a cornerback, he has all those traits, but there's certain things that you see on tape that trouble you, and it makes it hard for anyone on the front office side to endorse him as a guy that's a top 5 player.
Yeah, to me, it's just those lapses that he has. You know, he can play great for long stretches, and he has a lapse, and that's a position, left tackle and corner, you have a lapse. Bad things are going to happen. The 3 things I would say: number 1, size. You got to be next to him, just see how physically strong he is. I mean, he was 220 something pounds. The agility, the ability to play on offense. You spoke to it, Bucky. He's just very loose and fluid in his hips. Just a very agile athlete. And then finally, makeup speed. And this is something every corner you evaluate when you're evaluating guys in college. You're going to have that box for makeup speed to be able to look at it because you're going to get out of position.
Yeah.
Your eyes are going to get you in trouble. If you have that makeup speed, though, you can cover up some of those mistakes. You don't have that makeup speed, it's over. And he's got phenomenal makeup speed.
Yeah, he's outstanding makeup speed. He has outstanding vision. We can't use ball hawk because I used it previously, but he understands how to track the ball. And one of the things that I used to like to do, remember those pro day workouts when we have the guys one-on-one, is I want to see if they can catch because you talk about dropped interceptions, deflating the momentum of the team, deflating the confidence. I need guys that can turn it over because if you can get your hand on the ball and you can deliver those game-changing plays, you are a guy that is a huge asset to the defense. Patrick Peterson is an asset because he's a playmaker on the perimeter.
I agree with you. Want to jump into the next one here? Who we got next, Buck?
Yeah, we're going. Hold on. I'm gonna let you drive.
What we got?
Because you're a brownie at heart. I'm gonna talk about.
Well,
talk about Joe Hayden. What do you think about Joe Hayden?
Yeah, look, Joe Hayden. Outside of the 2 weeks he's got to play Antonio Brown, he's phenomenal. And Joe knows that I love him. By the way, we've had Joe on before. I had him on Path to the Draft. He's done some combine stuff with us. He's a great dude. But he is. You talk about the 3 words I use: fluid, feisty, and tough. Mm-hmm. And Joe doesn't have that ideal size, not a 6'1" corner, but he is so fluid, so smooth. And you couple that together with you have an undersized corner. You got to be tough and you got to be feisty, and he brings that to the table. He'll get his hands on you. He's going to play physical all the way through the route within the rules, and then tough. Tough to me. We talk so much about corners, and we're talking about how they're doing, playing the ball down the field. There is another aspect to the position. You got to tackle at some point in time. The guy's going to catch balls on you. You got to get him on the ground. Got to be able to help out in the run game as well. And Joe Hayden's going to give you that aspect. I just think he brings a definite mentality to the way he plays the game. And, of course, as we're watching highlights of him here in the studio, we see him make a play against Antonio Brown, but Antonio Brown's got the best of him a couple times. But I'm a big Joe Hayden fan.
I'm a huge Joe Hayden fan. I think Joe Hayden is a natural corner, a guy that has all the traits that you look for, with the exception of size at the position. The 3 traits that I look for when I see him: tenacious, crafty, and lockdown. Tenacious, you alluded to his toughness, his feistiness, his grit, his ability to really challenge guys at the line of scrimmage. When you watch him play, he plays with such energy that you know he's really into the game. He's going to challenge the guy to beat him repeatedly on the perimeter. I like that. Crafty, I think he's a rare guy that can employ a bunch of different techniques on the outside. You'll see him press, you'll see him bail. He can squat and jump routes from an off position. Just has a lot of tools in the toolbox that you look for, and it's hard to find that in guys. And then a lockdown. What he's asked to do in Cleveland is unlike what some guys do. He is in man-to-man, locked up all day long.
Go time.
Mike Pettin doesn't give him a lot of help over the top. They trust that he can get his job done. And look, I'm going to be honest, it is hard to play 80 snaps without the assistance of a safety over top. Joe Hayden does it as well as anybody in the game. It's one of the reasons why he has to be in the conversation of being one of the top guys at the position.
And we talked wideouts. This is off track here. We talked wideouts previously. Antonio Brown, and for that reason, I think you can argue about who the best receiver is.
Yeah.
He's the toughest cover if you're going to line up one-on-one with a guy for 80
do
plays.
Anything and everything.
Oh,
he's a headache. He's a nightmare to deal with because with Antonio Brown, you're dealing with the quickness, you're dealing with the change of direction. He can make plays after he catches it. And so it takes a unique corner that can match that guy. And it's one of the reasons why he hasn't had a tough time. He has been unable to be slowed down because it's hard to find guys that can match that.
The reason we're a good pair is because I know a lot of lyrics to 90s music, and you know who sung a song. So I think we're getting ready to play a game of you can get with this, or you can get with that.
A little black sheep.
Black sheep. Thank you.
Black
See, I didn't know it was
sheep.
black
Here we
sheep.
go.
That's why Bucky said, man,
Yeah.
TD, what do you got?
All right, you know, cornerback is a very competitive position. Everyone's always saying, I'm better than this guy, I'm the best. So we're going to do a little head-to-head here. So which cornerback would you rather have? I'm going to start off here with two young cornerbacks, Desmond Trufant from the Falcons and Xavier Rhodes from the Vikings.
Ooh, I like both these young guys. Look, if it's close, I'm always going to go bigger. So I'll go Xavier Rhodes. I like the way he's continued to improve and develop there for Mike Zimmer in Minnesota. Hopefully he's going to be a nice mentor for Trey Waynes, who's had a little bit of a rough go in the preseason. But Xavier Rhodes gives you that ability to match up with the bigger guys. Trufant, look, he's played great, and they've got Alford. They've got two good young corners there. I think I'd probably go Rhodes, Buck.
You know, I think Rhodes is a really good player. I think Mike Zimmer's done a great job of really cleaning up his technique. Jerry Gray there also, his defensive secondary coach, has also done a good job getting him the fundamentals. But I'm going to say, look, Desmond Trufant has been a guy that has surprised me. I didn't have a first-round grade on him coming out of UW. I thought it was a little rich when they took him. But look, he has played very, very well down in Atlanta. He's feisty. He's competitive. He'll challenge guys. He has outstanding leaping ability, which gives him a chance to hold up even against bigger receivers. He is a guy that gets it, and as that defense gets better under Dan Quinn, he will become more of a national name because people will begin to recognize his greatness on the outside.
Assuming everybody's healthy in this division, which we've had some big injuries in both these divisions, who do you think has the tougher assignments inside the division between these two corners? So I'm looking at it going, okay, Xavier Rhodes, you got Calvin, you've got Golden Tate, you have Jordy when he's healthy. You've got, who else? We got Alshon Jeffrey there with the Bears.
Yeah,
there's a lot of dudes there. But then you go down and look, okay, now you got Mike Evans, Vincent Jackson, Kelvin Benjamin if he's healthy, which now we know he's not. I mean, you got Julio Jones.
I think Desmond Trufant has a tougher road to hoe because
Julio Jones on his team, so I guess he doesn't have to play against him.
But he's dealing with the big guys on the outside. You're talking about those big bodies. He has to find a way to climb the ladder to make sure they don't beat him on face. But then he has to deal with that man in New Orleans who's Brandon Cooks, who is explosive, who is really ready to break out.
All right, what do you got? You got another one for us, TD?
I do. Hey, Madden came out recently, and the ratings
That's odd. Here we go.
Yeah, the ratings had the Denver Broncos cornerback, Chris Harris, rated higher than, his teammate, Aqib Talib. So
how much higher? How much higher? Is it like 92 and 91?
Like a 93 to like a 91.
Oh.
Yeah.
And you said they were upset about it, huh?
They were pretty upset. Aqib was not happy about that. Chris Harris is like his young boy, and he's better than him in Madden. So who would you guys rather have?
Buck, I went first last time. You start us off.
I'm kind of in Aqib Talib's camp. I'm more of an Aqib Talib fan. And the reason I like Aqib Talib, he's tall, he's rangy, he's a ball hawk. He has some of those traits that I think are special at the position. The one thing with Aqib is he can be a little inconsistent and check out at times mentally in games. But when he's locked and loaded, there's not a finer cornerback in the National Football League than Aqib Talib.
And I'll go on the other side of it. I'll take Chris Harris. And the reason is Chris Harris can play inside. He can play outside. He's quick. He's 5'10". Doesn't have the size that Talib has, but I think he matches up better with some of those Antonio Brown, T.Y. Hilton type guys where I've seen Talib struggle a little bit against some of those smaller guys. So that to me would be a little bit to tip the scale. I mean, look, I went back and watched a couple games of these guys last night. They're both really good players.
They are really good players. And I think, here's the thing. When we talk about building a team, when you're building a team, you would like to have a secondary with a couple of different guys in the back end to handle some of those roles because having Aqib on one side and having Chris Harris, who can also jump inside to the slot, and Bradley Roby, you now can look at each matchup each week and figure out what is the best way for us to match up with this team? Do I want Chris Harris to shadow Antonio Brown and Aqib, you go to the other side? It gives you a lot of flexibility. And as a play caller, I think you like having those different type of guys in your lineup.
And before we move on to safeties, we're going to hit the safeties here. Fashion review for TD's outfit today. We went to LL Cool J.
Yeah. Let me see what we got.
We went to Janet Jackson earlier this week, and then what do we got today?
The common thread is it's snug. It fits. It's well fitting. That's probably like a medium jacket right there, right?
It's 85 degrees outside.
Yeah, it's like a little medium jacket.
I'm here with our director and all our other producers. It's cold out here, guys.
Yeah, I mean, it's very European.
Well, he also has the beats over the shoulders, which aren't plugged into anything.
No, just hanging out.
Just
hanging out, letting them know. Nice shameless plug for Beats by Dre.
He'll get a sponsorship deal. The YouTube numbers keep climbing like they are. He'll
come in and have some gold ones, some of those big gold ones that I see the guys walking in.
All right, let's move on to safeties here, Buck. And we got three guys here, three great players again. We're not putting them in any order. These are just three guys we want to describe. and elite players in the league. We'll start with Earl Thomas.
Yeah, Earl Thomas. Now, this is a guy, a little story. Earl Thomas confronted me at a Seahawks practice because during the run up to the draft, I rated Eric Berry ahead of him going in. And part of the reason I had that because I thought Eric Berry was a safety with corner skills. And we all know, looking at safeties, we would like guys that can play multiple positions, interchangeable. But this guy has been an outstanding pro since day one. When I look at the traits that he brings to the table, rangy, thumper, and then I put steel. Rangy in terms of when I'm evaluating safeties, I want guys that can get from the top of the numbers to the top of the numbers if they play in the middle of the field. He has that ability to cover over the top and protect those corners. He is a guy that is also a thumper. Look, undersized, right at 5'10". You wonder, could he hold up when he was coming out of Texas? This guy throws his body around with reckless abandon, sniffing out the run, being active around the ball. He is outstanding there. And the third word I put in there is steel. I was taught by a great defensive coordinator, Willie Shaw, who is David Shaw, the head coach of Stanford's dad. He was like, when you're playing in the back end, it's important to have a guy that can steal second. In baseball, you steal pitches off the pitcher, not the catcher. So this is a guy that can read the quarterback's mail. He gets a jump on the throw, and because of that, he is always around the ball. His ability to play with eye discipline and to anticipate where the ball is going allows him to steal throws from the quarterback. Love how he plays in the middle of the field.
Yeah, look, I was around Ed Reed for 4 years, and that's
another guy, another guy that just unbelievable instincts.
So, and that's my first word I'll use here is instinctive, explosive, and then plays big. You worry about a guy with his size. How's he going to match up in the middle of the field where you're going to see some big tight ends coming down there? He can jump out the gym, and he can make all kinds of plays, high point the football. So he plays bigger than his size, and not just height-wise. You touched on it. His ability to force against the run, be a physical player. He brings that. But to me, the number one thing is just the instincts. I mean, you start with the instincts with Earl Thomas. Instincts, explosive, big plays. But if you got an explosive guy and he has no instincts, it does you no good. You always start with instincts at that position, and he's phenomenal.
You know, Earl Thomas is a guy that is kind of like the guy that is a communicator. He sets the table. But when you're the Seattle Seahawks and you have two safeties that can play, talk about what Cam Chancellor brings to the table and what you see when you watch the tape on him.
Well, when he shows up, when he's there, I can describe what he is. Look, I love the way he plays the game. Physical, tone setter, and leader. And to me, we talk about leadership. I'll start on the back end of these three. You want your leaders to be in the middle of the field. You talk about your center, your quarterback. You talk about your middle linebacker and your safety. You want to have that. That's the communication center.
Right down the middle of the field.
Right down the middle, right? That's the guts of your football team, and he provides that leadership. But the physical and the tone setter, he's a box guy. You drop him down there, he can cover tight ends. He can help you out in the pass game, but he is that enforcer over the middle of the field. And I think people falsely think that all the hitting's been taken out of the NFL. Go back and watch their Super Bowl against the Broncos and watch what he does on that first crossing. I mean, that changed the whole game.
Completely
it just set the tone for the game, and that's what Cam Chancellor brings. I think he's the second best safety in the NFL. He's not the best safety on his team, but I think he's the second best guy in the league.
I mean, you described him to a T, and I'm going to piggyback on some of your words. He is an enforcer, active, and I have showtime. An enforcer, like, he makes wide receivers pay their taxes for venturing across the middle of the field. He drills them every opportunity he has. He comes down in the box, and he will stone running backs in the hole. And I've also seen him throw a couple of fullbacks and lead blockers out of the club as well with his physicality. This is a big man. You're talking about 6'4", 235 pounds that can run, very active in the middle. Active in terms of his ability to always be around the ball. He's always around the action. When they drop him in the box, he is one of the first ones. It's like a race to make the play. Cam Chancellor is always there. And showtime. I look for players when I'm evaluating. I love to see how people play in big games. Like, the bigger and brighter the stage, how do they perform? This guy plays well in big games. Whenever we see them in the postseason, he is always one of the guys that makes the play. You pointed out the play in the Super Bowl where he drilled the guy on the crossing route. Even in the divisional playoff game against the Carolina Panthers when he makes the interception, but he also jumps over.
Oh, yeah, that was phenomenal.
The field goal team to block the kid. Like, those things change the game, and I like guys that really have the ability to elevate their games. He's one of those guys that can do it.
Dr. Dre, what do you got back there?
We all love Showtime. So who are your other Showtime players, regardless of position? Showtime players.
Man, there are a lot of Showtime players. Darrelle Revis is a guy that is a Showtime player to me. Richard Sherman shows up in big moments. I think Antonio Brown is a guy that turns his game up a notch when it's critical. when you're looking at it, like when I evaluate players, college players coming to the league, I always look at them in big games, bowl games, championship games, national championship games, because I want to see how do they handle the expectations and the pressure. Because if they can handle it in those environments, I'm more confident they can play in the NFL stage.
You know, it was a good one. Obviously, Ed Reed and Ray Lewis were both that way.
Man.
Suggs has always been, in the regular season, he might kind of lull you to sleep, then they'll get in the playoffs, and he'll just turn into a monster, start taking over games. But to me, Showtime doesn't. You wouldn't think of this person as Showtime personality, but Eli Manning.
Oh, he shows up.
He shows up in the big moments.
If you get him into the playoffs, if they somehow sneak into the playoffs, he can find a way to get you to the winner's circle. He is definitely a Showtime player. Julius Peppers, too, is another guy that doesn't get enough credit for his Showtime ability. A lot of people were, when I was in Carolina, it was always like, oh, man, I wish he could do. And I'm like, you do know that he gets 12 sacks every year. And every time we play a big game, he comes up with a play. Peppers is a guy like that.
I like to point out when you see growth in your kids, like, you see them, okay, they're really maturing and growing. I want to point out some growth I've seen in you, Buck, because that ball was put on the tee for you to knock Tony Romo out of the park. and you didn't do it. So I think that's some restraint that you've shown. I think that's, I know it's your son's favorite player.
I mean, my son has now evolved to more of a Dez Bryant fan, but the Cowboys are his team for whatever reason. But yeah, like that's his crew, the star on the helmet. They got him.
All right, let's move on here. Devin McCourty from the Patriots. Look, I thought he's one of the more underrated players, but you no longer say you're underrated when you get paid like he got paid, but he's a phenomenal football player.
Yeah, he's a phenomenal player. The three traits that I think about: versatile, center field, dependable. Versatile in terms of, look, this is a guy that played corner, he's played safety, he's bounced around to a couple different areas and had success doing that. He is a natural center fielder. Because you bring those corner skills and put him in the middle of the field, he can roam over top. Numbers to numbers is what we talk about for free safeties. He can do that, and he's dependable. To play in a Bill Belichick scheme, you have to be trustworthy, you have to be dependable, you have to be at the spot where you're required to be when it's time to be there. He does that. You rarely see him out of position. Because of that, you rarely see the Patriots give up big plays over the top of the defense.
I'm a big fan. I would say my three terms: athletic, versatile, which you mentioned, and then I'll put FBI, which even TD behind the glass can tell everybody. FBI stands for?
Federal Bureau of Investigation? No, Football Intelligence.
There you go. Don't mess with the audience, TD. Come on. No,
Football
FBI.
Intelligence.
Football Intelligence. We've talked about that previously on the show. He's just a very, very smart, heady player, and that's the Patriots' MO. That's what they want at that safety position. I've read through on a previous episode of some notes that Bill Belichick, I'd heard we had a guy that I worked with that had sat in a talk with Bill Belichick about kind of what he looks for in positions, and one of the things was you cannot win with a dumb safety.
No.
You can't. You have to have a smart safety back there. You got to make calls. You got to make checks. You're the last butt between the opponent and the end zone. You have to have smart guys back there. He's extremely intelligent. And, the versatility that he provides is just an added bonus.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about being able to move around. That's the one common thing with the Patriots. They like guys that have multiple things in their toolbox that can move them around, and they will, on a week-by-week basis, move guys around to put them in the best position to win. Devin McCourty is a guy that is kind of like a Swiss Army knife. You can drop him down and let him play nickel. He can play in the box. He can play deep. He can play on the outside of the corner. Brings a lot of tools to the toolbox.
And they took Jordan Richards out of Stanford, like the second round last night?
Yes.
I was like, whoa, that coffee is way too rich for me from what I saw. But then I'm like, you know what? The more I thought about it, I'm like, he's highly intelligent for what they asked him to do.
They specialize. They get guys that can only do certain traits, and they kind of put the pieces of the puzzle together. It takes a lot of trust in your coaching staff to be able to figure out how those skills must mesh together. But Bill Belichick has done it, and who's to argue with his record?
All right, I want to get back to TD real quick. And TD, before you fire a question at us, I want to hit you up. We know here Move the Sticks is your favorite. But if you're going to have to pick this or that, Damashek show versus Around the NFL, and you can't say the coach's show, which is your standard comeback, you're falling on the one side of the aisle here.
Come on.
It depends on what I'm looking for. It's all about the scheme, right? If I'm looking for pub culture, the fan's voice, I'm going to my main man Damashek. If I'm looking for
toaster
stuff, kitchen appliances. If I'm looking for that kind of information, Brady suspension, details, and scientists like they like to call themselves, I go to ATN.
And by the way, we are team players here, so please download Dave's podcast and listen to it multiple times. We love Dave Damashek. He's a friend of the program. And then I think there's another podcast as well. Go ahead, TD. What else you got?
All right, let's do it. Who would you rather have, the safety edition? I'm going to start off here with two veterans, Eric Weddle of the Chargers and Glover Quinn of the Lions.
Ooh. Eric Weddle's one of my all-time misses, by the way.
Oh,
Coming out of Utah. Well,
Really?
because he had played, he had switched positions. They played him some corner there at the end. That was his big moment, right? In the bowl game against Calvin Johnson, he had played well at corner. But coming out, I just didn't know what the size. Is he a tweener? Like, is he not big enough to be a safety? Is he not, quite athletic enough to play corner? So I was like, is he a third safety? Is he a starter? So I gave him like a fourth, fifth round grade.
Oh,
and,
okay. So
his ball skills are phenomenal, his playmaking skills, and of course he's been much, much better than that.
It's funny that you talk about Eric Weddle like that because he was one of the guys that I tried to stand on the table for in Carolina, but he didn't have a lot of things that you look for because you wonder if he's tall enough, is he fast enough, what position does he play? Because at Utah, he did bounce around and play a bunch of things. I think the thing
Return punts too. He's athletic.
The thing that stood out to me, he was a 2-time Mountain West Player of the Year. And I've never seen anyone in college where the ball just finds him. Mm-hmm. It would be a fumble 20 yards on the field. It would bounce 3 times and hit his arm. He'll return it. They would block a punt. He would scoop it up. He would return as a punt returner. And I think the thing about it, and I learned this watching a former teammate, Dre Bly, guys who get around the ball in college somehow find a way to get around it in the pros. It's just one of those things that they just have an innate feel for doing it. Eric Weddle is a guy that can do it. Glover Quinn showed up really well this year for the Detroit Lions. I think he played well in Terrell Austin's system. I'm just a huge Eric Weddle fan because I just believe he always finds a way to make these game-changing turnovers.
Yeah, so I missed on Weddle, but I did not miss on Glover Quinn. At New Mexico, played corner, so I was like, okay, I know he's big, I know he's physical, I know he's strong. Can he play safety? Is he going to be a corner? I just thought he was a really good football player, and they'll figure it out. One of those deals where you're in the room, like, where does he play? Let's just get him on campus.
He's a football player.
We'll figure it out. He's a football player, and man, he has blossomed with the Detroit Lions. So I'll take Quinn. I think we'll separate there, but I think these are two very good players.
No, they're two very, very, very good players.
All right, one more. 2 young safeties right now. Harrison Smith of the Vikings or the Honey Badger, Tyrann Mathieu of the Cardinals. Who would you rather have?
Well, I know you're a big Honey Badger guy, but
I like Harrison Smith.
I know Harrison Smith has more size. This is a toss-up to me. I guess I'll say Mathieu because of the ability to cover in the slot and what he can give you as a nickel as well as being able to play just a ball magnet as a high safety as well. Harrison Smith gives you a little more physicality, a little more size. Again, I guess you could do a cop-out and say it's what you're looking for, but a healthy Tyrann Mathieu, if you promise me I get a healthy Tyrann Mathieu, that guy's a playmaker, man.
And looking at Tyrann Mathieu when he was coming out, he kind of reminded me of Weddle. Just a guy that just has a knack for making plays. I sat in here with him one day and we watched film, and I was asking him, how do you know, his ability? Remember, he had all those fumbles in college. He was like, I studied. The coach would put me in a position to do it, and I would study how they carry the ball and doing some of those things. And just being around the ball, those instincts and the awareness is just hard to find guys like that. But I'll say this about Harrison Smith. He's a guy that flies under the radar, a very good player, very athletic, instinctive. He can hit, he can cover from hash to hash, sideline to sideline. Whatever you want him to do, he can do. I think the Minnesota Vikings are poised to be a team that are maybe the last one standing in the NFC because they have all the traits, and Harrison Smith is a key component of that defense.
I was talking to somebody the other day that's been watching a bunch of tape with the team, and this time of year you're getting ready to watch all the cuts, all the potential roster cuts, so these guys are cranking on tape. And so I just asked him, look, you've been watching a ton, you've been kind of locked in the office. What jumps out at you? And he told me, he goes, Eric Kendricks for the Vikings will be the Rookie of the Year.
Oh, I mean, he
put it out there right now.
He's a guy that's very active and aware. That Vikings team on both sides of the ball, if they can shore up the offensive line, they are a team that is very, very good. Mike Zimmer on defense has that team rolling. Griffin on the side, you talk about Kendricks in the middle, Harrison Smith playing the deep middle. I like the Vikings, and I do like what they have to take. We even talked about Xavier Rhodes, so we keep talking about all these guys. Last week I talked about Everson Griffin. There are a lot of guys that we keep talking about in purple.
And Teddy's is the straw there. What do you got here, TD? Are we ranking and banking now? It's your time.
Sir, to wrap the show, we're going to do a top 3 for each position, the skill sets of each position. So, Bucky, you're up first with your top 3 cornerback skills.
Top 3 skills. The first thing I'm going to go for, I'm going to say Joe Hayden and his competitiveness is one of the things that I look for. We talked about in describing him, his ability to get after people, tenacity, tough, challenges them on the edge. I like having guys that are unafraid of backing down from challenges. There you see him against Julio Jones. I want Joe Hayden. Secondly, Richard Sherman and his awareness. ball skills, instincts, however you phrase it. I want a guy that understands what's going on around him because they're going to make plays. He's a playmaker because he understands situation and circumstance. Always comes up big when his number is called upon. And then finally, Darrelle Revis. I want his intelligence on the outside. We talked about having smart players, a guy that can understand exactly what the coach wants him to do in the defense. He can play the scheme, but also has an understanding of what people are doing to attack him. Darrelle Revis does it better than anybody in National Football League.
We talk about quarterbacks in route combinations, double moves, trying to get corners to take the cheese. Darrelle Revis flips it on you. He sets the trap. He sets the trap, and he goes ahead and makes plays on that side of the ball to trick people. He's just so dang smart and intelligent.
Yeah, like seeing all three of these guys. That couldn't go wrong with starting either.
All right, you took care of the corners, Buck. And again, Buck, you should have done the whole thing. You played corner and safety in the NFL. But I'm going to give you my safety skills here. I'll start with number 3, and Tyrann Mathieu, who we've talked a lot about, and the versatility he brings, the ability to be the high safety, kind of cover up all those mistakes over the top, but you can also drop him down. He could be a force defender if you wanted him to. He can play outside at corner. He can play in the nickel. So versatility for Mathieu. Second, I'm going to go to Seattle and Cam Chancellor and that physicality. I believe in having a tone setter back there, somebody that can deliver a big hit, change the momentum of a football game, and that's what Cam Chancellor brings. And the number one skill to me, I'm going to stay in Seattle. I'm going to go to his teammate. And instincts, the most vital part of playing the safety position. Earl Thomas has the best instincts I've seen at that position since Ed Reed. I think he's really knocking on the doorstep of some of the things that Ed was able to do there in Baltimore. Phenomenal instinctive player.
No, I mean, you can't go wrong with any of these guys. The fact that you can talk about Earl Thomas and Cam Chancellor back-to-back talks about it. It really speaks volumes.
You talked about Richard Sherman.
Boom, and what they're able to do. Cam Chancellor bringing the physicality and the toughness. Earl Thomas bringing the instincts and the awareness and the range. Hard to find that combination.
Hey, TD, look, we've had a fun talk here. I want to give a little bit of a shout out to everybody we have behind the glass because there's a lot of people working on our show now. Real quick, give a quick shout out to everybody that's working back there.
We got Sean Sullivan here, who is our Swiss Army knife. He does everything. Today he's doing graphics. We have Brandon McGinnis, one of our segment producers. He's out here timing you guys, making sure the show's all right. We have Jeff Talley, our director. He's in control of everything you see. And my main man, Will Powell, who's just, cutting the cameras on the ones and twos.
So, TD, if we are playing an NBA Finals game and we're announcing the starting lineups, we always put the marquee player, the last one. Who is the last guy when everybody comes out? Who's the one that brings them up and does the low fives and really sets the table? Who's that guy that sprinkles the chalk out like LeBron? Who is that?
Simply because I've been doing that since I was like 7 and 8.
The guy says me.
Just because of that. So
TD, I know you haven't seen this. I know you haven't seen this movie, but you are the big Ern McCracken of the Move the Sticks podcast. Who's the biggest threat to you in the tournament? Me. I might get drunk, fall down, and hurt myself. I could lose. That's what TD brings to the table back there. But look, hey, Buck, it's been fun. For those first checking us out, hope you enjoyed it. We'll be back next week. I believe next Wednesday. No show on Monday. We'll be back next Wednesday for a fresh show. Maybe Jim Schwartz, former coach, might be joining us here on Move the Sticks. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for downloading Move the Sticks with Daniel Jeremiah. For more, go to NFL.com/podcasts.